How long have you been over there now in the Argentine?
Almost exactly 10 years.
16th of November, it'll be 10 years.
And that's the second time you were there. That's a long time in your ministry. So you're going to miss it when you come back?
Yes, although I think it's time to leave.
Yeah.
It's one of those things where the church is a crossroads, and it needs to develop without missionary ways of doing things.
Your involvement, yeah. So obviously you're coming back, and you're coming back to a life of retirement and relaxation.
I think you can't ever really retire in the Lord's service, but you can. It's like a new chapter. You go on to something different.
Yeah.
So I think we see it like that. What the new chapter may or may not hold, we have no idea yet. Yeah. And it's probably best to think about that yet. So
we'll have our first 6 months when we're still employed by CMS and going around visiting linked churches and other things. Very glad for that, because that will give us 6 months in the UK to think about what comes next. Because we really can't get our heads around that from here.
No,
we'll have that to think about what comes next.
How are you going to be? How is your ministry at the moment being affected by COVID? Has it made a difference for you?
Well, basically, of the 3 provinces where there are indigenous churches, ours is the only one where there are very few cases and no deaths so far. Right. But having said that, there are quite severe restrictions on visiting. And, right. You're supposed to have meetings of not more than 10 people socially spaced, it just doesn't really work. We think doesn't go that way.
So we haven't been out of the little town of Ingeniero Juarez where we live for over 7 months now. Well, David had a day out a few days ago for the first time. Other than that, we have not left this one small town.
And you have how many churches that you've been involved with?
150, roughly.
Yeah.
And the difficulty is they're spread over such a wide area. And at the moment, obviously, there's no way of getting to see any of them. Yeah.
Is that going to be difficult for saying goodbyes?
Probably it's not going to be very satisfactory, to be honest, yeah.
And that's hard to leave under those circumstances, I would think.
Yes, although if it's the way it's going to be, we've just got to go on with it. There's no, you can't do anything about it. So
I confess that big goodbye parties I find a bit of an ordeal. So if we go a little more quietly, just go and see a few people that we particularly want to see and say goodbye to them personally, and just do a WhatsApp message to the rest. It's
so that's something we could be praying about, isn't it? The handover.
I think the handover, that's because really a lot of the training has always been done on missionary terms.
Yeah.
So the handover has been impossible because of the situation this year. And it may well be that the Lord wants the whole thing to drop to the ground that's happening at the moment, and for it to sort of re-emerge more on Weechi terms and Toba terms.
Yes.
So, it's not going to be a tidy handing over of the baton. It was never going to be like that, but it's even going to be less like that than we'd sort of hoped and expected. So that's just,
And that brings its own challenges for you and for the church.
I mean, we know we're not indispensable, and we know it all doesn't depend on us, but it really is a question of trusting that the Lord's got in hand what he wants to emerge for the next stage of training and ordination policy, all those sort of things.
Yeah.
It may be dramatically different from what everyone thinks at the moment. It may well be that all the missionaries, include the diocese bishop, we all need to go before they're really given permission to start thinking what they want to do.
You said about the bishop. Now then, I believe he's taking an extended leave at the moment.
Poor chap, he went to England in February.
For a couple of weeks.
It was going to be 5 or 6 weeks, and obviously he got stuck. And he's having to keep in touch with people via, WhatsApp groups and so on. But there's no international flights. There's no way of him getting back at the moment. So,
and you have to hand stuff over to him?
Ideally, they will come back before we leave. It will be a bit of a shambles otherwise, but there'll be some way of doing it if he doesn't come back, but we hope he does. We sort of feel duty bound to be here at the moment, but this whole situation could rumble on here for 6 more months, another year. No one really knows until there's a vaccine. So really delaying our departure probably doesn't really make any sense.
Yeah.
There are ways one could get from the UK to Buenos Aires or from Buenos Aires to the UK. The hard bit is there are no internal flights, there is no internal public transportation, and you are not allowed to cross a provincial boundary unless you have all the right legal paperwork and things. So getting from Buenos Aires to Juarez is an absolute nightmare. You can go by taxi, it's hugely expensive. But with some people have had to do that, but there's usually about a 3-hour delay at every provincial border. And the lockdown is much stricter here.
We shut down, there have been 171 cases to date and no deaths in our province. So we're the exception, we come at the bottom of the league table, fortunately.
Okay, so at the moment, you're still planning to come back at the end of January, beginning of February, was it?
Yes. And at the worst, it could be one of those sort of repatriation flights.
Right.
Which that's on offer if it's not a normal flight, but yeah.
When you come back, where are you going to be living? Are you going to be in your old house in Bishopdown Farm, or what's the plan?
Well, thanks to COVID, the rules changed for giving notice at the end of August from 3 months up to 6 months. So they're in legally to the end of March. So they may leave early and they may not. So theoretically, we'll be going back to live in our house in Bishopdown Farm.
Eventually.
Eventually, yes.
Yeah. Okay, so there's a few things there we can be praying about. Obviously, the handovers, not just to the local people, but also to the bishop.
Absolutely, yeah.
Would be helpful, wouldn't it, I suppose?
It would, yes. Yeah, definitely.
And somewhere to live. Anything else you think would be good to be praying for?
I suppose the other thing that's slightly on my mind is that in theory, the 6 months back in England, we're going around to visit linked churches and other people been praying, supporting us. Yeah. But it may well be that none of that's actually going to be possible. So it may be another case of not really being able to say goodbye properly.
Yeah.
But
Zoom.
Well, by Zoom, it's okay, but it's not the same, is it?
Okay. Well,
another thing on my heart here is that there are people who are trying very hard to comply with the regulations and keep a distance and wear masks and stop the spread of the virus. And there are other people who say, well, for 7 months, we've been doing this, nothing's happened. We need to meet. You lot are all just afraid of the virus. We're going to meet anyway. We're not afraid. And so you have lots of people disregarding the regulations, having large meetings, doing exactly what they want to do. That's sort of, I think, all over the world. It's not, but may the two groups come together afterwards. May this not lead to antagonism and division in the church or outside or in the community. I'm sure it's the same in England. It's a worldwide problem.
Worldwide problem. It really is. You made a comment in one of our communications about the old chorus which says, "Our times are in your hands."
Right.
And I think that and this are examples of us saying, Lord, our time is in your hands.
Yeah.
We have to trust him, and
Yeah.
it will happen somehow.
Yes.
But
Not
we
necessarily the order we expect or the time we expect, but that doesn't matter, does it?
but we're looking forward to seeing you back here again.
Love to you and also to Sheena.
And Sheena.
I see you guys. God bless.
Hope to see you on Wednesday.
See you on Wednesday, all being well.
Good. Look forward.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.